Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Christelle Delberg. I'm the new Director General for EuroCommerce, the European Association for Retail and Wholesale. This is my pleasure today to host this 11th of our series of policy talks with leading European political figures. But before we start, on behalf of our members, I would like to share my thoughts and for the people in Ukraine and our deep sorrow at the lives that have been already lost and the damage to the country. We are here welcoming today Mr. Axel Voss to this webinar on the AI Act and how Europe can address both the opportunities and the challenges of the technology. Mr. Voss, you are an undisputed expert on issues surrounding AI in the European Parliament. As a rapporteur for the URI committee and a shadow rapporteur in the LIBE committee. You have been an MEP since 2009, representing the Mittelrhein, I hope I'm saying that properly, the Mittelrhein constituency covering the area between Cologne and Bonn for the CDU. You are trained as a lawyer, you've been active in local and national politics for many years, and you have lectured on European affairs at the University of Koblenz. I hope it's all right. In your previous mandate, you were a vice chair of the Committee on Legal Affairs, a post that you left afterwards to become a coordinator for the EPP group in 2017. You have been very active and you have built an impressive track record in all issues related to innovation and data protection. So we are very lucky, Mr. Voss, to have you today with us, as you are putting together the final touches to your report on the AI Act. AI is very important to retailers and wholesalers who are both users and developers of AI systems to make their operations more efficient and ensure that consumers have a wide choice of the products that they want, when they want them, and at the best price. But as a sector, we also rely on consumer trust to do our business. It is therefore very important that we have a structure which gives consumers the confidence that they need on how AI is being used, but which also leaves room for innovation. For this webinar, Mr. Voss, I will invite you to start by speaking to us for about 15 minutes to share your thoughts about your report, and give us perhaps an advanced preview of how you're approaching the various issues on the AI Act, and also when we can expect your draft report. After that, I will share some of our specific points on behalf of Retail and Wholesale. And then my colleague Ilya Bruggeman, our Director for Digital in EuroCommerce, will share with you a series of questions that we have collected from the audience. And then we will proceed with some concluding remarks. So without any further ado, Mr. Voss, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the invitation and also for having me and discussing this very important file. And just to try to say to how important this is, how I'm feeling the situation is that whoever leads in AI, who will lead the world. So AI is of strategic relevance for us in Europe, and we should be more more courageous and more future orientated and forward going instead of thinking and protecting everything. So this is what I'm thinking in general. So the main threat for, I would say, our citizens, or especially in the politician world here, is that we have a kind of a shift of power from the human beings to a kind of a machine or to algorithms. And this is what we have to face. And the AI Act, from my point of view, is a kind of an attempt to answer to the question how we are dealing with the European society with algorithms. And so it's, I would say, necessary to do somehow, also to keep or to have a frame what we think it might be important on these ethical aspects and so on, but then keeping space of maneuver for everyone who is developing AI systems. And this is something what we should not underestimate, because in the digital world, everything is somehow, you will have some good issues and also bad issues on everything what you are doing, and therefore we should concentrate on these things what we do not want to have, but then leaving space to for development, for innovation, and so on. But we have to be careful that the AI Act is not becoming a GDPR 2.0. So this is then too complex, too problematic, and probably everyone then who would like to evolve here something is more thinking, oh, should I go abroad to train my algorithms? And this should not be the case at the end. So that's why if I'm coming more detailed to the AI Act itself, when I'm reading these, I have the feeling this is already too complex what is proposed. So, but I'm not sure if we can simplify these a lot, but we should try at the end. So I still would say, so we need a good definition for AI, but we need a better definition for high-risk AI. And because, a lot of the content of the AI Act is just referring to the high-risk AI systems, and that's why we should also more concentrate on these. And here I would say the definition is already too broad. If I'm seeing, or how I'm seeing the situation, that let's say 95% of all the AI systems are in place right now are totally not harming at all. But then we are coming probably to this 1 or 5% of AI systems we should more concentrate on. But here we have to be very careful in have a kind of a definition in place that is focusing on what is really a threat and not focusing on what might be kind of difficult. But if we are widening these, that every fundamental right might be affected or should or can be affected, and this is already a kind of a high risk area, then probably we end up that every AI system might end up like a high risk system. So what at least, and on the other hand, I would always say we should have also kind of a regulation on AI liability. I know this is coming later on in this year, but if I'm coming out with an AI Act, then of course it would be always better to have also the liability question included already. Here I would like to go in this direction, what we have done with the initiative report. One of these big questions is that we need to discuss how we would like to control the AI, especially high-risk systems, and how we can do this in a proper way. Here, from my point of view, I would say we should not follow the example of the experience of the GDPR in this case, because this is only one direction orientated, and this can't be the kind of the future I would like to see it. And that's why I would say we have to be very careful here, also in what system we would like to implement at the end. On another question, we should also talk about, or you should let me know your experience or what you're thinking about, is the risk-based approach. Again, the experience what we are having with the GDPR is not in this direction I would like to see it, because I have the feeling the risk-based approach is not existing in practical terms. So that's why I would like to think about how we can implement a risk-based approach here, that we are not ending up like in the GDPR. I do not see the facial recognition and the banning of it as a kind of a very wise step. Why not? First, because taking out one specific technology and banning it in a way, this would be not a wise way forward, because you never know what the business model might be afterwards, established on or founded by these facial recognition, and then it becomes a little bit tricky if you are already seeing the self-driving car in a public area as a kind of an facial recognition in a public area. So then we can't or shouldn't use it in a way. So, but this is not the way forward, and we should be very careful in picking out one specific technology. The sandboxes, and here I have a kind of a big hope that we can create an environment for everyone who would like to train the algorithms. And how I'm seeing the situation right now, we will, as a parliament, come up with the whole wish list what an AI algorithm should deliver. This is something, let me pick some issues. This is something like explainability. This is not discriminatory, gender balanced, not biased, and or bias free, and so on. And here we are coming to a situation where we have to solve this controversial moment, where we, with the data, with the GDPR, we are saying, oh, no, you can't use personal data. But in the AI system, we are asking, oh, you need to have a kind of a quality algorithms, and therefore you need quality data, but we are not providing these. And that's why I think we have to solve this controversial discussion if we can also use personal data. And this should happen then, and this would be my idea, is in thinking in a kind of a solution, that we creating a sandbox in saying, oh, here you're totally free, you can use all the data you want and train your algorithms in a way how it should be, and how you can do this. Because I'm hearing more and more that some companies are leaving Europe for training their algorithm systems, and this is not what the intention is, neither the GDPR nor the AI Act, but we have to be very careful in find the right wording that it leaves still space for maneuver. And here I would say the sandboxes would be a kind of a very good good frame in coming up with where you can train your algorithms in a way that you can feel quite freely. Another point we should discuss, or what we should have in mind, is the questions of overlappings. We have had in, I think, 2 weeks' time or 2 weeks ago, kind of a legal expert hearing where they are telling us, oh, the GDPR, DSA, DMA, AI Act, they are not streamlined. And this is a little bit shaming for legislator. So that's why I think we need to focus also on these overlapping issues. And there I need your input, probably you knowing this better than I do, but it might be the GDPR, the e-privacy, the Data Governance Act, the Data Act, the Digital Services Act, Cybersecurity Act, or whatever it is, but please let me know. we can also discuss a bit the question, should the AI Act a kind of a lex specialis, and seeing the GDPR probably as lex generalis, or how we would like to deal with this, or is this a kind of specific regulation? If we're coming to the ethical standards, how you are seeing this, what we should do with all these requirements we would probably like to come up with. And then what I already mentioned is the governance system, how we like to have kind of a governance structure in place. What comes up to the digital single market with one approach, and hopefully, if needed, guidelines, practical orientated, and so on. So these are more or less the questions we have to solve. And here, of course, I need also your feedback on these. And I hope I could give you kind of a lot to think about and to discuss. If I may, of course, in the AIDA committee, we are also dealing with AI, but in a more strategic way. And this is also very important that you also might a little bit focus on these, because it's necessary that we as a European Union are coming more and more in a position where we have a plan, a concept, a strategy, and also thinking about the execution of these. So, of course, then you need the infrastructure, you need the investments, you need the talents, you need cybersecurity, and on and on. And so this is what we are trying to do in the AIDA committee. But I know it's more important for you to focus on the AI Act right now. This is something, I hope you can rely on, at least on legal clarity issues, to develop and to be creative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Voss, and for sharing your thoughts and those very, very important questions. And in particular, on behalf of retail and wholesale, which is a key sector in the European economy, if I can just stress again, in a few figures, 5 million businesses, 26 million people, 10% of the GDP. So we are quite an important business. And we are an important user and developer of AI system. And we do recognize, as you said, the many opportunities that AI represents for growth, for consumers, businesses, society, and innovation. And I think I will pick up on the point on your concluding remark that we need today, as the companies and the sector are transforming significantly. We need an environment that supports competitiveness, that supports investment, and that supports that digital transformation in Europe. For us, using algorithm is a way to process highly complex and large amount of data in real time and generate an optimal solution that will meet customers' expectations and demands. For instance, for instance, like faster delivery, anticipating customer demand, stock management, fraud detection, safer payments, or bringing in more sustainability. So it is very operational. In most cases, AI applications and automation technologies that are used, they carry no direct impact or risks for individuals, but they do improve. They are there to improve the shopping experience and operational efficiency. So as a sector, and as a result of that, as a sector, we have been identified as a safe sector in the AI white paper. And for us, it is essential that we remain so that we can, and we're still able as a sector to build to build on the AI infrastructure, and we remain able to continue to innovate. Just a few comments on some of the questions that you have raised. The definition of AI, as you said, there is a risk that it is going too broad. And if it is too broad, there is a risk it will cover optimization methods that have been used in the sector for many years, and they were never qualified as AI. So I think we need to be very, very careful that we have a clear definition that creates the necessary legal certainty, avoids creating unnecessary burdens for the companies, and captures what needs to be captured. As I said, legal certainty is important, and we would like to have more clarification on the prohibited uses of AI. So we do endorse the objective of avoiding harmful use of AI, but equally, as I have said before, commonly used techniques in retail, like advertisement, recommendation systems that are based on AI, these should not inadvertently fall within the scope. In relation to the high-risk users of AI, these should be very limited, and they should be limited to specific use cases which actually bear a high risk. So with an actual high risk. The classification of high risk, that should be based on the concrete use and the context of the AI systems, the probability and the likelihood of a worst case scenario, and the severity of harm and irreversibility of harm. So again, be very, very specific. I would like to pick up on your point about the consistency with other legislation. We have seen a lot, and you have mentioned them all. There is a lot of other legislation, and the consistency across the board has to be ensured, and in particular in the context of AI, and you have mentioned that the importance to avoid overlaps with the GDPR. The GDPR should be maintained as a blueprint for all further digital and data-related legislative proposals. So let's make sure about that we have a consistent approach across the different legal acts. We also need a clear distinction between providers and users' responsibilities. I think this is a very generic concept, but like for any other piece of legislation, the responsibilities should be allocated to the actors who control and has influence on the systems. And finally, and you have also said this, it's very important that legislation is future-proof and flexible enough to accommodate future technological developments. So it is about creating a framework that is conducive to innovation. And the last point about the penalties, we are, as an organization, we are very concerned about various pieces of legislation with very strong penalties. It is extremely important in relation to penalties to be coherent across all the legislative proposals. And in here, our proposal would be to be coherent with the GDPR. So with those preliminary comments, I would like to perhaps give you the chance to react, and then we will proceed with Ilya with the interview questions that we have received from the audience.
So thanks a lot, and also thanks for this overview. What is the most, or what are the most important points for you? So of course, legal clarity. I try to come to this point in legal clarity, but if you have to compromise all the time with these, let's say, 7 political groups, and then with the parliament and council and so on, this might come to a situation where we have to give up a kind of this legal clarity to get some majorities. But I hope that we can have at least, we are trying to get this legal clarity. Otherwise, we know already from the experience of the GDPR, if something is not clear enough, then it creates such a problem for everyone. and then it might hinder also innovation because you don't know if you're allowed to do here something to do. But of course, this is something what I would always focus on, to be precise in legal issues. And also if we can come to these, what you have called use cases, especially to these prohibited examples of AI high-risk cases. Yes, I think we should come to this point, and we are trying also in my report already to focus on this a little bit, that we trying not to take everything on board what seems in this direction. So if we're coming to these energy infrastructure, seeing as a kind of a critical infrastructure, there we have to make a kind of a difference from my point of view, that we are saying not every AI system working in a critical infrastructure is a high-risk AI system. So we have to differentiate a bit what is the intention of these, and then we might come to kind of an evaluation if this is high risk or not. Because of my legal background, I always interested also in these avoiding of overlapping. So creating a kind of a legal environment where everyone knows at the end, this belongs to GDPR, this belongs to AI Act, this belongs to, let's say, NIS or whatever. This would be wonderful if we're coming to this point, but just let you know, if I have already missed some of these overlapping legal instruments, please let me know. We have to focus on these and then to find a solution where we have to do what. Regarding definition and liability of users and providers and so on, yes, I think we have to differentiate them more. And when we discussed the GDPR on the future-proofed or technically future-orientated upcoming developments, so at that time we have been sure that this is also technically neutral. But as I'm seeing it now, we do not have a solution in the GDPR so far for, let's say, blockchain and cloud and AI and so on, so that we need to adapt probably more in clarifying these. But here, of course, we are intending to do or to have a wording what is also future-proofed and innovation-friendly. But probably you can't guarantee this for the whole future. But then I'm expecting a legislator should be more flexible and looking easily for solutions and giving you some guidelines what you can need, and then developing on this kind of guidelines or ideas. And this is what I'm expecting, but we haven't done this so far. That's why we have to very clear also about how the Commission is acting on these, because we are trying then to delegate these to the Commission, and then we should come up with a kind of short time solutions and not waiting a whole legislative procedure in finding solutions. Regarding the penalties, yes, so coherence might be good, and I would more, if I do not know if you would agree, but I would more streamline this with the GDPR if this is helpful already. I know it's already very high, but we have also to cover or to cover the situation that we have big techs in place who has a totally different budget for everything than small or medium-sized companies. So that's why we have to use a kind of a range of situation. If you think we should more differentiate in a way with these fines, I'm quite open for proposals. But if you wouldn't have mentioned these, I would say let's go to the GDPR and streamline this there, because there we have already some experience. But if you think this is a wrong approach, then please let me know.
Thank you very much. And before we move on to the questions, there's one question that is top of mind for our audience, and you haven't answered that one. When do you think you will publish your draft report?
You're right. I forgot to mention this one. So the deadline already set by the Parliament or by the Secretariat is, I think, today, or it was yesterday evening or so, that we have to deliver already our kind of report. And it will be presented on the, I think, 14th of March. And as far as I know, but this is just what I have heard, that the leading committees in Liebe and in IMCO will present this at the end of April. And so, and Yuri would like to be beforehand, because we would like to set a point already in saying we should more focus on practical wording of this AI Act, and hopefully to making this clearer than what we have already proposed by the Commission. But it depends sometimes if we can achieve this. But this is our intention. And of course, as a shadow rapporteur in Liebe, I would like to follow also this line. And then I hope you will be on my side in supporting and promoting this more practical way forward, and that we are not only protecting and then not giving space for maneuver to develop and innovate.
Thank you very much, and we look forward to engage. Perhaps it's a nice it's a nice transition to the questions from the floor. Julia, would you like to raise those questions?
Yes, of course. So, well, I think already many things have been said so far. I mean, I think you both already touched upon a lot of topics, but I really liked, Mr. Voss, that you started with the sentence like we should be more courageous and forward-looking. So I think that's a nice slogan to keep in mind. I think in general on these type of files. So, and I think we already talked a bit about the definition, and you said I think you agree with us that maybe the definition is now a bit too broad, and I think in our view it might actually capture very typical, also statistical techniques that are now commonly used. And what kind of options do you see there, maybe to make sure that just commonly used techniques that we already have now that are not necessarily even AI based will not be covered? And maybe I can connect it also to another question where we have been talking about, because I think our sector is completely customer driven. We try to serve our consumers, our customers, as best as we can, and especially with digital, I mean, there are more and more options. So our members are innovating and trying out all kinds of new techniques to serve their customers better, also to make it easy to find the products that they want or the services. But we also see that for instance, there are questions about certain techniques, and for instance, social scoring and remote biometric identification. And probably, I mean, there's some sense in that we have to be very careful in applying those. But we are afraid that also techniques like, payment with your fingerprint, or issues like development of cashierless stores, and even the use of AI for customer loyalty programs might become some kind of collateral damage. And do you have maybe ideas on what we could do to make sure that we can still innovate, but obviously in a safe way and with respect to our customers?
Yeah. So at first, at the definition, so I would say we should add here at first also saying something about what risk means and what is risk of what at the end, to make this very clear. I do not share the view of the Commission in saying, oh, if kind of fundamental rights are affected in a way. Here you have such a broad range of fundamental rights. If this is a kind of, if you're looking to the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights, I think here you can probably say every AI system might, of course, affect somehow some aspects of fundamental rights. So that's why I'm not really a friend of this approach. But here I would say we should more focus on body, life, property, and so on, and then having some kind of situations where you have a kind of predictions and recommendations what might affect the future life of individuals. So here we then need probably some additional differentiation. Again, to the definitions, I would say we should have the kind of a general purpose of AI application, what this means in the definition, and also to add the autonomous dimension, that we are focusing more on autonomous AI systems, meaning that this is operating by interpreting certain input and by using a set of predetermined instructions and so on, that we are more clarifying this. And yeah, this would be one way forward. But now I forgot the other questions already from my explanations. What was the other one? You had a different question.
Yes, well, that retailers are developing all kinds of new technologies, are experimenting with that to serve their customers better. But that we see these techniques as something that will improve the customer experience actually. But we are afraid that those might become somehow collateral damage in this act. And do you see ways on how we can ensure that I would say these other techniques would not be covered by the AI Act? So for instance, like a cashierless store, or that you do a payment with your fingerprint, these type of things.
Yeah. So far, what is prohibited and what I have understood from the proposal, meaning biometric data somehow used for law enforcement or public authorities and so on, should not be developed in a way, but privately, and as a private company, you can use it. But I hope, in addition, when we will come up with this e-identity, also biometric data should probably play a role there. But once again, we need to be very careful in forbidding everything or seeing this too strict. We should be more open, but then having safeguards in place and saying, if you are using something like this, you can't share to someone else, and probably you have only restricted access to these, or whatever it might be. But I think the usage of biometric data we should normally allow, and this might be also a help and a kind of an improvement for our day-by-day lives. That's why we need to enable this. but having safeguards in place. So this would be my approach in trying to balancing these in a way, saying, yes, use it, and you can use it, but be careful with this and that. So that's why I would say we can approach these on such a direction. Even if we're coming to find facial recognition, there are already technology solutions in place in the aspect of data protection. So already also for law enforcement might or can use these, but also protecting privacy of everyone who is not being described as a criminal. So this is already there, but so far the majority is not there for this. But I think this should be the way forward, not banning, using everything, but being careful and protecting, safeguarding, and so on, the access and the storage and so on. And this would be also, from my point of view, moving forward, if we can use this in our day-by-day life with biometric data.
Thank you. That's very encouraging to hear. So I'm looking at my screen and have a question from the audience. So we believe that responsibilities should be allocated according to the party that holds the information and is making decisions on the intended use of AI. And the Commission proposal is not very clear on that point. And do you have something in mind how to handle that in your report?
So far, we would have the idea in trying more to differentiate. Not, I would like to change the word provider in this direction more than differentiating in developer and deployer and end user and manufacturer, that we are coming more forward and concentrating on all these aspects in these product at the end, and who might have liability or responsibility for what. This would be an idea. Once again, I do not know if I might have the majority for it, but I think this would make it a bit clearer, that everyone has a kind of a responsibility on his part, what this level is doing at the end. And so just to make this also clearer for everyone who might be affected at the end. I hope this is a way forward. If you have other suggestions, please let me know.
Well, thank you. I think in this respect, I think what we always say is, that the roles and responsibilities should be balanced. So, and I think obviously as a retailer and a trader, we are often the user of this technology, and obviously not the developer. And I think it's always important in all these different files to keep that in mind. Mm-hmm. Actually, I was wondering about something you said earlier, because you said here that the Commission will be coming with a proposal on AI liability, and you actually said that should be covered maybe in the AI Act. And I think also a little bit later you said something about all these overlapping pieces of EU legislation, which of some I think some of you mentioned are not even yet final. So how would you see that? Because I mean there are for instance in some of these pieces of legislation, yes indeed they talk about algorithms. So you think that should all be covered in the AI Act, or if you think of what the Commission's plans are on liability, is that even possible? How do you see that?
So I'm always asking myself, so if we are now coming with an AI Act and would like to cover the whole aspects of AI and AI systems, high-risk systems, and so on, there should also be a part of it of this liability. But what I have in mind regarding liability is more than less the kind that we are harmonizing these throughout the EU. Because so far, of course, you have already, if you're producing or developing something, you have already liability on what you're doing, but every member state is probably doing this differently in a way. And to harmonizing these, it would be better to have this also on board and make this clear that there is a liability, but probably more than less in a way the national liability order is already giving you the idea, but having a kind of a common European approach on this. It's very tricky because this is civil law, and civil law is in the competence of the member states, but at least we should fragment our single market, our digital single market, because of these civil law competences. That's why I see this very necessary in harmonizing these. And once again, harmonizing, I would say we should more focus on aspects like damaging or harming your health, your body, your life, your property, and so on. And then coming again with some aspects if you are just letting algorithms decide about the future of employment or the future of your credibility and so on. So the financial credibility. So and this is I would say we should add here already something to this, but I know it might not have a kind of a majority once again, because everyone knows the Commission will come up with a proposal, I think, in summertime or after summertime, and and this might lead to some frictions. But I still would say if we're coming out with a product like the AI Act, this should also cover the liability question.
Well, thank you. I think that was clear, and I would say in general we are in favor of further harmonization, but also I think we need to be mindful of, if we allow then, if we go for minimum harmonization and we allow then member states to still have diverging rules, it still might not be super helpful in the end. So I think maybe that's good to keep in mind, the things that we can actually, maybe where it is possible and appropriate, that we go for maximum harmonization if that's possible. All right. So maybe going back to the penalties, and I know this is maybe slightly off topic, but we see now also in the AI Act, we see that they're going for maximum fines, which are a percentage of the turnover of companies. We see that now coming back in all these different pieces of legislation, and maybe in more general terms, like how do you look at that, and do you think these type of penalties, is that proportionate? You think this is a way forward for in new piece of legislation? Because I think in some cases, I think it comes from competition law, and then it went to the GDPR, and then the maximum fine was 4%. But now in some piece of legislation, we see even 10%. And I think this is like Crystal said earlier, this is a very big concern among our members, and they're all wondering, where is this going?
At first you're right that this is not very well streamlined so far, and it probably because every committee is doing something different and nobody is paying too much attention to the other committee. And that's why we have these somehow different approaches. But also having in mind that we have big tech companies in the market. If they are facing a fine like, let's say, 1 million euros, this means nothing for them. But at the end, if we have medium and small-sized enterprises, and they have to pay 1 million euros, then it might be a kind of a big damage for them. So regarding the fines, I would always say we should not come up with fines for just bureaucratic issues. So if you're not meeting a timeline or whatever, yes, it might, if you're doing this always, then probably you should come up with also some fines like this. But on other hands, if you have a real high risk AI system, what might create or harming these your body life, etc., then you have to be careful. And then, of course, it depends. And this is how we would like to describe it, that taking into account what do you have already done regarding safeguards and regarding development and let's say keeping cybersecurity already in mind and data protection in mind and so on. If we have done all these and this is just a kind of a, let's say, coincidence that this is not working properly at the end, then this should be taken into account. So what we would like to propose here in the Jury Committee is a more differentiated approach on fines, where we are saying to the Commission or whoever is the governance structure at the end is that we are saying you have to take into account these, and this. And if then is something happening and even not probably pay too much attention to these safeguards and so on, then you should think about some fines. And then, of course, it depends also from the size of a company and so on. This is more the way I would like to see it. And we would like to propose something like this in this direction. And then let's cross fingers if colleagues are also supporting these.
Well, I think it's already great to hear your views on this, and I think following also from what you're saying, you know, that the focus should be on compliance. You know, we don't want to, because imposing penalties or fines on companies, you know, in the end, you know, will it really change something? What we want is that businesses are compliant, and obviously a lot of businesses are willing to be compliant, you know, but indeed they might just make mistakes. So you need to help them to achieve compliance. But obviously there will always be a group of, we call them the rogue traders, you know, that will always, you know, just ignore the rules, you know, and for those, obviously they should be, you know, punished severely for their behavior. So maybe going back to one of the more mundane things in the Commission proposal, what are your thoughts about the self-certification of AI?
Yeah, yeah. I see this somehow a bit critical. If this is working properly, yes, then we should think about. But I have sometimes the feeling what we have done already, trying to regulate the digital market, especially the big techs who are always traced in a way that they can handle this quite properly. And if we are simplifying their lives, it probably means that this is more complicating lives of our European digital industry. So that's why I'm a little bit undecided on this point. If this is then helpful, but at least on these high risk issues, I'm not sure if there should be kind of a third party involved in evaluating. But then, of course, we have to limit the use cases of these prohibited or these high risk AI systems. If this is so broad, then self-certification might be a kind of a way forward. But if this is more narrowed, then probably we should more think about a kind of a third-party certification. But it depends a little bit in which direction this is going. But I'm intending to balance these in a way in saying if we are very strict on the definition, then it doesn't need to be a kind of a self-certification. But if we are very open and everything is included, then I would say self-certification must be quite good, because there's also a kind of a practical problem. All the ones who are auditoring these at the end, at first you need the experts for these, and probably we do not have a lot of experts for these certifying. And so we need a kind of a good balanced situation that we might have this in mind if we have a lot of cases, but not having probably this in mind if we have just some few cases on AI high-risk systems.
Thank you.
I don't know if I could do myself clear. I'm always balancing probably too much, but this is how I would like to proceed in a way that we are not overburdening the AI developers and so on. But at the end, what is really threatening, we should more focus on this. So this is always, if you have probably some use cases you have in between of all of these, then it's getting somehow difficult. But yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Voss. I mean, we're coming. It's been a passion. I mean, it's been a thrilling discussion with you, and we are already coming to the end, towards the end of this policy talk. We're quite strict on trying to maintain this within the hour, and it looks like it's only the beginning of the discussion. Just a couple of points that I would like to pick up on what you have said, but very important points for us. One is the importance for future competitiveness and to make Europe an attractive place to innovate and develop innovative AI solutions. So that's something that we would certainly praise as a main objective. You have pointed out to issues around the need to have a good definition of AI, and the definition is too broad. Be careful. Another one is the need for a risk-based approach, and also the need to make sure that we're not picking on a specific technology, but be future-proof. Very important. The need to streamline all digital legislation and the need for coherence. And that's probably something that we will need to continue to discuss with you. You did talk about a strategy that supports investments altogether. And that's probably that's a very important point for us. Something that Ilya also picked up on, it's the importance of the workability of legislation and the consistency. As I said, eventually businesses will have to comply, and it is important for them. And in particular in our sector, where the margins are very low, the turnover is very high, the margins are very low. The workability of legislation and proportionate fines are extremely important for us, because eventually it could mean the difference between profit and losses in our sector. So something just to bear in mind. Mr. Voss, you said discussion on the 14th of March, if I picked up that up right, in the Jury Committee, and Libe in April. We very much look forward to hearing these exchanges and to continue the conversation. Thank you very much on behalf of our audience. Thank you very much for being with us today on this 11th of the of our policy talks. Have a very good day.
Yes, you're very welcome, and hopefully to keep in touch.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
And thank you very much.